One.
Two naked
Recording.
Asians. Well,
Two
one
naked
is
Asians.
naked.
Yeah. No, so because this room is very warm, so I thought, oh, maybe today I should be naked, because what's naked Asians without a naked Asian?
And meanwhile, I decided to wear my
You froze.
new ski suit because it's blue, and everything I have is super dark. I need to be these streamers that have crazy colors.
Huh.
Huh.
No, I couldn't hear what you just said because you froze for a second. Well,
Yeah.
good choice for the movie. It was interesting.
Yeah, did you like it?
I don't know if I don't know if I liked it. It was interesting. I watched it and then I first thought, okay, so this must be a movie from like late 80s, early 90s.
2003.
Yeah, until I looked it up, I was like, 2003, the year Last fucking Samurai came out. And
yeah. Your favorite.
I would say this is much better than Last Samurai in terms of how they talk, right? The Japanese character wasn't as bad as Last Samurai. Because it was playing with stereotype, but the performance was better. I thought the Japanese actor, he didn't exaggerate, he was at the edge of being a caricature, but I believed his character actually. Like I could see an actual Japanese guy behaving that way, talking that way. I could see picture like a real Japanese guy having those awkward moments in Australia or any countries of the Occident. The first half I didn't mind really. I was like, okay, so this is stereotype, but they didn't exaggerate the comedy, so it felt authentic and real to me, I believed. The second half just became kind of boring to me. I was trying to see what their attempt was. I was like, this is kind of romantic in a funny situation, but there is a romance and there is a connection, and these characters are like relating to each other, and they're like getting to know each other, and they're getting closer. But then there's that stupid sex scene where she puts on a pair of pants. I got confused.
Was it his pants, I think?
It was his pants, so it was supposed to be some kind of like erotic move, like I'm wearing your pants, and then she sits on him, and then
but there's sheets. He's still under the sheets.
Oh, is he under the sheets?
Yeah, it's like some Mormon sex.
Yeah, and she sits on him, but she kind of like moves like she's pulling his dick inside her vagina. She does this like, I'm sitting on it, like I'm trying to find the hole. I'm trying, trying to stick it in, and it's going in. She does that gesture, so I'm like, is there a hole in her pants?
And the sheets, or maybe they're doing this Mormon sex thing where you fuck through the sheets.
Yeah, that was confusing. It was weird. Like they used Okinawa song for the theme song.
Oh, yeah.
That felt awkward to me. I mean, definitely if I were part of their team, if they hired me to go through the script and asked me to kind of for my suggestion, I would like tear it apart and like.
Well, yeah, it's like it's a bit, I mean, the soundtrack aspect is it's a bit like typical Orientalization treatment, like in Lost in Translation. No, it's like it's a white gaze, a white experience of Oriental kind of concept. Okay, so it's a guy from Japan, so let's put in some Okinawa or string stuff that everybody just go, oh yeah, Japanese, but has nothing to do really with the guy or what is the perspective? I mean, for me, I saw this film. So this was in 2003. I saw this film in Australia.
Hold on. Ayoto, maybe do you wanna tell our audience what we are talking about? I think you can do this better than me, but we are talking about a movie called, what is it, Japanese
Yeah, we
Story?
gave no introduction. So first off, we're going to talk about the fact that, I mean, I'm picking up where I left off, which is I was doing the 100 Asian Men in Cinema. But then, then I got busy and then other things came up and I was doing the streaming. We were doing the streaming live, but then I thought, I think this format is better because we could just talk about it and then present it a bit. And then during this time, I also thought, wait, it's not just Asian men in cinema that I think needs to be talked about. It's Asian men in diaspora that is needed to be spoken about, which is very rare. And so the first one that I thought of is this particular film called Japanese Story from the 2003, the same year as The Last Samurai that was released. It's the year that I graduated from high school. And this was the first, maybe the second film I've seen where there's an Asian man and white woman. I mean, the first one was like maybe Jet Li in Romeo Must Die, but that was, in the end, they just hugged. They didn't even kiss. It was an Asian man with a black woman who was also kind of in diaspora in the sense that he was just a foreigner, right? But he was still Asian in the sense that Asian from Asia and just came to the US for some ass kicking. Whereas, I mean, this film is the same. The guy's just visiting from Japan and there's the kind of crossing of cultures, a love story. But it was the first time that I saw as a kid growing up a romantic thing between an Asian man and a white woman. And that was, and then on top of that, it's 2003. So, when I was a kid, when I watched TV shows or porn or anything like sexuality in Australia, I had to get the newspapers, and in the newspapers, they would have ratings. And this is what I find so absurd about trying to keep the children safe, right? There's all these restrictions and warnings that this movie contains adult themes, sexuality and nudity. And so as a kid, I would get the newspaper and just highlight for myself like all the movies that has all the good stuff, adult themes, sexuality and nudity. And I'm like, bingo, so I was just in it for the boobies, and which it was a little bit, but there was, and now I watch it and it's like, I mean, now there's so much porn and whatever stuff you can see on the internet, so I don't know how kids feel. But at the time, I was 17, 18 with raging hormones, with very little access to sexuality and nudity. And for me, it was like, oh my God, like, there was a white woman tits with an Asian man and they have sex. This is just, imagine the fact that I was so in the white Australian world, right? And it's not even about wanting, it's, if we accept the idea that desire is taught, right, and all the ideas of whatever white world, and then I'm this Asian guy, and then never do I see myself represented ever, and suddenly there's this one film, not the best film in the world, not terrible, but the first film with an Asian man, and he has sex, even though they're having sex between sheets, and her putting on these pants, like what the fuck?
Not between sheets, with a sheet between them.
The guy, the guy's lying in bed, super passive. Okay, so here's the thing: the movie is directed by a white Australian woman, so I think it's a very white female gaze on the story, which is fine, but still at the same time, it's also aspects that you see what's going on. So one of it is like this, I think there's a lot of the film that, in my opinion, the director and it's seen through the eyes of the female white character. And there's a lot of it that is trying to talk about, I think, the asymmetry of power between men and women, right? And then there's also class, because he's from a rich family and they own the company, but she's Australian and they, this feminist idea of, I don't know, equality between men and women, which is very different to a Japanese traditional concept, especially from a rich guy from Japan. And they come and it's like, okay, we own your company, you're a woman, and you have to do a job. And so there's all these like the first part where they're trying to like on top of the cultural comedy stereotype troping, but also like I think it's more about the woman feeling like, okay, well, he's a man, but he's an Asian man, but he's the boss. But here in Australia, we don't do this kind of thing, blah, 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 blah. Then it gets, as the story develops, the drama. I mean, okay, I think we should all preface all our talks. Spoilers alert, like go watch the film because there's no way for us to hide spoilers. So,
right. We can tell them the story, the whole story. Yeah. So the guy, he's here for a business trip or something, but he goes, no, this is private. So I guess he's just like supposed to be a private, like just vacation, I guess. But then these Australian people in this company that's owned by the Japanese company, which is owned by his father. They have to escort him around, show him around Australia, and he insists on going to see these rocks far in the desert, like 100 kilometers away or something. No, even more, I guess.
Yeah, super
they say
far.
Like 10, 20 hours away. But the car gets stuck in the sand.
And they have a struggle. And through the struggle.
And this woman has to take him. So two of them are on the road and the car gets stuck in the sand and there's a struggle. The guy somehow doesn't want to get any help because he feels so ashamed.
Yeah.
And eventually she convinces him to let her use his cellular phone to call for some help, but the cell phone dies.
Which I don't get because he was calling on the phone before.
Yeah.
But her phone was already out of reception. Yeah. I thought he was faking it at first, just to pretend to be busy.
I thought so too, but I guess he had a special connection, like a special
satellite
signal.
Japanese fancy.
Yeah. Who knows? But then, anyways, the phone conveniently dies. So conveniently for the filmmakers, not for the characters. The characters are like, oh,
we could die.
We could die. It gets cold in during night, and it's like -5 Celsius during night. So they're like by the fire, and they're like, the woman goes slightly close to him, back to back, and it's kind of like intimate, and it's like, oh my God, are they gonna fall in love? The next day when she wakes up, he's like naked and he's like putting all these like trees under the tire, and then it saves the car. They go back and they have this like awkward moment. No, they go to the hotel and then they have sex, and there's that sex scene we are talking about. He's under the bed sheet and then she gets naked and then wears his pants and then sits on him over the sheet and then makes these weird moves, and then it's like, are they having sex or what the fuck are they doing? The next morning they have an awkward breakfast moment, and then awkward like, oh, am I gonna pull her chair or... And then there's this, they go on this like a romantic, suddenly they're on this like romantic, what's it called? Voyage.
Yeah, it transforms. It's like this, there's a very good Marxist analysis of Shrek that this guy did. And, it's the same kind of thing. Like there's the feminist reading, right? Yeah. Which I get bored and annoyed at some feminists in the sense of like classic, I don't know, like third wave technical. I get bored by a very specific kind of feminist stuff, which is like, it's the same as every other stuff that they criticize, but they just want the female version, even if it's bad. And I really don't like this. I want to be, I want to be emancipated from all of that. I don't want to just have a female version, a female Elon Musk. Like, that's just dumb. The starting of the movie is that he is the subjugate, like he is the higher class person, right? He is their kind of. It's difficult because he pays for her eventually, right? She works for him. She is enslaved by the system that his company owns, and he's there, and she's just a submissive subject.
Yeah, she can't say no.
She can't say no. She doesn't like what's going on. She doesn't like him. There's also the race difference and all these difficulties, which is kind of interesting.
She didn't want to go into the desert.
She didn't want to go.
Desert.
Yeah, but she has to because money and capitalism, and that's the corporate thing.
Yeah.
Then they have this intimacy kind of thing, and then now, because they have this intimacy, then they can go on a romantic voyage, as opposed to. But the whole point is that he's still there for corporate, like his own money system, and he's married and blah blah blah, which is fine. But I just find it like the romantic transformation of what I don't like is how romance can delineate people from the horrors of capitalism that we don't like.
I understand what you're saying.
The same thing happened in Shrek, right? Shrek Shrek is the classic proletariat. Shrek is all the cliches. Ugly, smelly, has no class, he's fat, blah 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 blah. He lives in the swamps, he doesn't, it's just gross, right? Then and the donkey is the one that's like, is the revolutionary. He says, hey Shrek, I don't mind you, I'm cool with you, but fuck these like prince assholes and all these blah 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 crazy shit. And he's trying, but Shrek is actually a very passive person. He's a pacifist. He doesn't want to have problems. He tells Donkey to fuck off. I don't want to fight. I don't want to have a revolution. And Donkey's like, come on, we can do this. And then the princess comes, and then Shrek falls in love with the princess through difficulty. Just like this movie. There's a difficulty, they come together, and then suddenly there's romance. And then there's the happy ending. But this movie I like because the guy dies, which I think is actually done quite well. Because they got so happy, excited, boom, hits his head, he's dead. And even the second time I'm like, he's not dead. What the fuck? You can't just die. And
so Ayoto's talking again about the movie. The Japanese story. They're on this hiatus and it's all romantic, and she's like, let me show you something, and she jumps in the lake, and then he's like and chasing her, and he goes to this like a higher place, and then he jumps and she goes no, and then he hits the water and he never comes out, and then he's
this
dead.
Part I find this like, I mean, okay, I want to say two things. One is that even this time I watched it on double speed just to watch it in time with you. And I've seen it before, and I'm an adult and I'm older. The first time I watched this, I cried. And even today I watched this, I cried. Even though I think it's trash. The story.
How do you...
Okay, listen.
I don't understand, but that's kind of cute of you, like, that you.
Okay, but the thing is, I mean,
you have the heart to cry with this kind of bullshit.
Okay, so the thing is, maybe this is the thing. Maybe, like, okay, it's like you watch Shrek. Like, okay, I've got two parts of my body. There's like one part which is like the analytical and very, blah blah, like smart and go, this is bullshit. This is wrong. There's so many issues with this, but there's another part that can still go and be like, oh my God, and go through the effects of it. But I find it annoying. Like, this guy, okay, there's so much character flaws. Like, you're expecting me to believe that some Japanese CEO, son of some CEO guy of some huge mining company comes and is okay, first of all, is okay to go on an expedition with a woman. I mean, I'm not saying that it's all right, but for this guy, first, I think these guys always travel like 5 dudes in a go, like him going alone. Secondly, let's suppose they have this romance thing and they have some kind of sexual thing that happens. It's so white woman writing that what happens is this idea that the man wants to show off and goes on a high point and dives. Okay, that I don't want to be presumptuous, but I would never do that. And I do not believe that a Japanese man who is a company man who has wife and kids and a fucking huge company, you expect me to believe that this guy suddenly has this kind of teenage idea of excitement and wants to show off and jump and dive head first in fucking Australia. I just don't believe that, even though I cried.
There was a moment where he kind of changed. In the very beginning, he goes, "This is private," and he's not on business trip, and then I could see this character wanting to like escape from this family business thing, and then wants to be who he is, and then he does at one time. Opens up to her and says, all these pressures, I have all these pressures. And then they have sex, and then they're like in the wild nature, it's like a huge like stones, and they're like sitting together, and he's like looking at a stone, and he's like, "This stone is very, very old." Wow, it's an old stone.
You see the problem here. Like you and me are the Asians closest on doing this in this kind of story, and even with us, we're like, no, like I don't know. I would never do this. Like I can't. And I don't know about you. You can say if you would. I doubt you would be this character in this kind of thing. But imagine like a Japanese man who has grown up, lived his whole life in Japan, a CEO in Japan of some mining company. Aside from the believability, like let's just leave it at that. I think it's some Disney Western female gaze kind of prerogative, and that's fine, and I can. Yeah. I think deep down at heart, I'm a white woman. I think that's. What? I'm watching this with this white female gaze and be like, oh yeah. And like, do you notice like they also use this scene where it's the classic James Bond male gaze objectifying women shot. The woman comes out of the ocean. Did you remember this part where in the beginning they go to the beach and he comes out of the ocean? That's the classic objectification scene where we objectify the Asian man. Here we objectify the Asian man.
Skin exposed.
Yeah. And then this is the annoying thing that I find about white feminists, where they place themselves as a subjugated subject matter, and then after that they go and do the same a toxic white man would do to their women, and then do it to the next level down in their heads. Now we're gonna look down, and that's where I find the part where she puts on the pants. You know what that is about? It's about the idea that the woman is going to put on the pants. I'm going to put on the male pants, and I'm going to fuck you. I'm going to fuck you. And the whole time he's there, lying there like a quote unquote. It's not even feminine. His position in the film was really like the submissive, even though, and she's trying to play with it because at the same time he's the boss of the money part, but at the same time, screen-wise and story-wise and character-wise, he's playing the submissive role, which is fine.
He's like just like lying there with a weird smile on his face, like like you can't even lift your fucking arm.
Yeah.
Completely powerless, kind of like catatonic almost.
Exactly, and this is where I'm like, white feminism and white female gaze annoyance, and it's fine to do that, but I find it annoying when I know the underlying rhetoric and the underlying complaint of the female feminist perspective, but actually you just want to replace the existing structure, and you do it through the works that you do.
Sometimes it works. Sometimes it works to
said all that,
switch on. Yeah.
But I think if you completely switch, then do it. I just find it annoying when the Asian man is kind of used as a kind of as a target, as an expense for their frustration. But it's like, what did we do to you? And then I get feminist women coming and they just want to dominate me and violate me, and that's fine if I'm into it, and there are people who are into it, but don't just assume that I'm just going to be this passive, submissive person because you expect that. Just as it's annoying when a man does that to a woman, I think that's also annoying, and I really get that. Like, I feel like almost using a feminist reading back on her and be like, you're fucking annoying.
I agree to a lot of things you say. I mean, the white feminist thing, like, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I understand I can understand that you get angry, but as a gay man, I'm not exposed to so much like white feminist attack.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm like, and I don't have, I don't feel frustrated with white women, So for me to respond personally, it has to be more like the white supremacy within the gay community.
Well, that's the thing. That I'm not talking about white women as a class forever and all white women. I'm saying like the dynamic and the unawareness.
Yeah.
And for
So
you,
it's like,
you also did your high school in the U.S.
Yeah.
In
It
Wyoming?
made me think Wisconsin. The movie made me think about this a lot because I was like, being 39 after going through all that I went through, I'm pretty okay with what's happening in the movie. I'm like, it's just like boring and like stupid, but I'm not like personally offended. Like I'm not passionately angry about this. It's just like the things you talk about, like jumping off from like a high place, showing off like a kid, kind of like it's all like, to me it's just like plot wise too convenient. Everything just happens. It's very convenient for the writer and the director, and it's like, so as a viewer I'm like, okay, so the intention is too easily read, so it's not like life. If you want to write a good story, you have to make things unfold like it does in life. So things need to be more spontaneous and unexpected, But this is like, okay, now they fell in love. Let's give them a little misery. And he jumps in the lake and dies. I'm like, okay. And then it's like 30 minutes of her like moaning. She's like sad and crying. And she's like, what do I do with the dead body? It's like, okay, so you don't, like, why do I have to watch this just like her going like sad for, I don't know. I was like, what's the purpose of this story? First I thought, maybe is this about overcoming the trauma of World War II? Because often war is mentioned in this, weirdly often war is mentioned in this story. Like they talk to this old guy and he's like, at the battle with Japan, the war, blah, blah, blah. And also in the cafeteria, somebody says like, don't talk about the war. And it's like, are they using these characters to like kind of show like, although with the big difference, you can still like relate and like have a connection?
That's the thing. I find it, this is the problem with like simple romance dramas, that it's not that deep. It's very simple. And even in this case, there's kind of interracial subjects and, global economics coming into play, because 2003, that was in the time when Japan's economy was coming back on a rebound. It was a little bit better than before and after that time. And in Australia, there was an influx of Japanese investors, and people started to get more into Japanese culture, but purely because, and this is what, aside from the film, this is my personal criticism, it's not easy to have interracial relations. I'm not talking about man and woman. I'm talking about like everybody. Like, it's just not easy dealing with people that have different cultures and they look different to you. Everybody suffers from this. it's not just something that white racists are prone to, right? We can all do this. It's othering, it's tribalism, and it's just so deeply ingrained in us. And I think because of that, I think it's important to admit it and to work on it and to talk about it. But the problem I have with this film on this subject is the fact that it's not even about the film, it's about criticism about society, is that during this period when there was good money and the mining was doing well and the relations with Japan was well, then people started to learn fucking Japanese, apparently, in this film. In real life, I'm not so sure Australians actually, they're terrible with languages, most of them. They don't need to, they don't have to, and they don't. So you expect me to believe that all of these people working at this mining company, no offense to mining companies, but let's just say you're not exactly the most culturally diverse group of people. You expect me to believe that they all learn Japanese like standards and blah, 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 and like, oh yeah, here's my business card and blah, blah, and they all fucking speak Japanese. Bullshit. Now, the next problem is that the economy for Japan fucking busted and all the Japanese left Australia, right? Then came the Arabs, then came the Chinese. And guess what? The Australians are not like, oh, now we learn Arabic. Oh, now we learn Chinese. No, they develop more and more racist sentiments until now it's like, fuck China, and it's like, well, how's that going for you? Okay. And I just think that this movie has a kind of like naive romanticism that even though I cry and I watch it like with a Kleenex, like, oh my God, I think that
I know there's the soft part inside of you.
So, I can still enjoy all of the ranges of my emotional possibilities.
The acting wasn't terrible, really.
No, it wasn't terrible. I even though I agree with you, it's like 30 minutes of the film at the end where she's just fucking moping around. But I have to say, like, structurally, I liked it for 2003 and when I was 18. That he just died, and I like the fact that when he died, there was no music. It's just the reality. Like, fuck. Now what do I do with this body? That's fucking awkward. Holy shit. And it's just like, well, I guess we have to keep it cold because it's smelling. And then the other people are like, well, fuck, can you not come to work because you're kind of annoying? So, in that sense. But again, I also thought, are we going to run out? Can we reach 100 Asian men in diaspora films? Like, I just don't know that many. I know a few and I'll keep researching. Yeah. But I don't know 100 of them. But let's see if we can get to 100.
Yeah, I know very, very little.
But I think we can branch out to like different people in diaspora because I think structurally there can be a little bit something. But anyway, you want to
give a what?
A final rating.
Final rating. 1.5 out of 5. But I'm a very...
I like all these really random... I like this new rating system of out of 7. I'll give it 3 out of 7.
3 out of 7. Okay. Yeah, that's...
Because it was the first Asian man, white woman film that I've ever seen at the time.
The attempt isn't bad. It's way better than The Last Samurai. It's just that the story isn't told well. It's just plot-wise, it's convenient. And after hearing what you said about, it's just convenient, right? It's because you know the reality of you lived in Australia for a long time. And so you know the reality of Australia, and if love, if overcoming that obstacle of difference is that easy, if love can solve anything, then what's happening now in Australia? And then and love is a tricky word, like you said when you talked about Shrek. Love is a tricky word because like when somebody's like oppressor, or like when white people want to talk about the Native Americans, or when they want to talk about the bad things that happened in the past. They want to talk about love. They say, well, in the end, we just gonna love each other. We just, they want to like talk about love to avoid dealing with the painful reality, the painful truth, the painful past. They use the word love to avoid that nasty,
it's
disgusting reality. But we need to actually dig into the smelly, messy thing in order to sort out what's there and what can we do about it. Like Jane Elliott, my favorite educator, Jane Elliott, she teaches about racism, and she says she's not sold on love. But she believes in justice. So justice and love is different. So you can talk about love and maintain an unjust system.
Yes, that's Shrek.
But what you need to do is you have to bring justice. You have to make this place fair to everybody.
Otherwise,
and then
it's just
maybe love comes in the end without talking about it.
Love happens. I mean, in this case, is it love or is it just a fucking fling? It's just chemistry. Like they just got horny. Like the guy still has to go back. He's got obligations, as he said, and I like those parts. It's like, fuck, he's got a wife and kids he's got to deal with. He's got a company to run, and it's just a nice like. And I think here's another part. This is 2003, pre-Grindr, Tinder, Instagram, massive online dating, and just fucking sex clubs. Like she's living in the desert, and he's just like on a fucking business trip, and it's just like, hey. There's a nice little holiday, like business trip romance. But I mean, what's love got to do with it? Other than the fact that they survive together. I think that's also kind of interesting. Yeah, like this whole thing of, I mean, there is like, I like this part of this, like if you use the Marxist analysis idea that he is alienated from her and the rest of the kind of working class people because he's like in a suit, he's got the money, he's just here, he wants to see the rock. And he cannot make a connection with her. But when they struggled, when the car broke down and they have to work and he has to like take his shirt off, suddenly, because he has to suffer together, the two of them can agree. And now they have real conversation. I like this part where they were like, you know what? If you kept doing this, I wanted to kill you. And I thought, wow, that's a connection. And I think this is a reminder of like the modern society, how it's all like, we have to be nice to each other. We have to be pleasant and say nice bullshit. Fuck your political correctness. I wanted to fucking kill you. And I thought, that is a good connection. Now we have some honesty. We can deal with some things. And I think that was what revealed the potential for intimacy, which before, fuck intimacy, they couldn't even communicate honestly to themselves and to each other. And I think that's a good analysis of like,
that was the first time the male character had sweat on his face, right? He was he was sweating, he had dirt on his face and he had his suits off.
He got down on the same level, dug the dirt.
He was digging the dirt.
At the beginning, he
was refusing to do any physical labor.
He didn't even want to put the suitcase in the car. He was just sitting there like, you do it. And I sit in the back like, you're my driver.
Yeah. Interesting. So it was, I think it was a very, very interesting choice, for you to like introduce me to this movie and watch it. I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion. I think.
Yeah, and I can see, why you cried.
Why? Why did I cry?
Well, because it's tragic. He died, and also there was that like wife. She's like she doesn't show her emotion. She just like hands a letter that was supposed to be given to her, from him. He was like, by the time you're reading this, I'm on the airplane flying home. And then, he doesn't know he's gonna be dead and flying home. But he's writing this letter. He's like, now I can be a good man, good husband, good father, thanks to you.
What the fuck?
And then
the question is,
this letter is handed to her from his
the
wife.
I mean, the question is, who am I crying for? The wife, the girlfriend, this white woman, or him, or me? You know,
Or you.
And you know, my whole what I thought of something yesterday, that one of my sufferings, but also the power, is the fact that I have very little things I can relate to. So I have very little sympathy or empathy for people and a lot of things that they go through, because I don't care. It's not my problem. I'm not in that structure. But which also is very difficult for me for other people to relate to my problems, and I'm sitting here like screaming around, and you know, it's hard for me to connect with the system. And here's a funny comparison. I was on the plane, and I was sitting next to a man who looks like John Goodman. I mean, maybe it was John Goodman, but he just looked like John Goodman. And this man, it was a flight from LA to New York. And on the plane, all this guy watched was films of John Goodman. You know? And I thought that was the first time I was made aware.
He probably was John Goodman. I don't know who that is, by the way, but he probably
John Goodman
was.
Was like,
because if I were Junshin Soga, a famous actor Junshin Soga, and if I'm on the airplane, all I'm gonna do is watch movies with Junshin Soga in it. You know, I'm like,
I got Phoenix to make a film of me in the hotel watching my own YouTube channel. Me watching myself. It's so rare. And on the TV with the remote, like, interesting. It's like absorbing. There is no more signifier. It's like the Baudrillard shit, you know? Like, usually there is a thing, and then it informs the subject, and then you copy. But soon the copy becomes the copy itself, and it's an infinite loop, and there is no original thing. It's just, you know, and that's that. But this film, I think for me.
Wait. Why did you talk about John Goodman? You were telling us...
No, because the idea that most people watch only themselves. Like, when I did my film with Andre, what I noticed was that most people who are not experiencing diaspora, their habits in life is that they only watch themselves. They only concern with themselves. It's like if you watch Netflix, if you have a Netflix account, and you're a regular person, and they know your nationality, your skin color, and your gender, and you watch a big blockbuster. The reason that they have big blockbusters with different representations is so that you, the individual, they can reach something out to you, which I find is the biggest disaster and makes me even more angry, because I don't want corporate to get better connection with people. And that's what I get annoyed at. Social justice is that they're fighting and banging on the doors of corporate and saying, be nicer to us. I think this is the biggest disaster. I think, no, I don't want corporate to be nicer. I don't want you people to connect better with fucking Spotify, with fucking Netflix, and then you're just teaching them how to be nicer to you. It's like, do you want actual revolution and changes in society, or do you just want the bankers to be a bit nicer to you?
See, that's like, we don't know, you know, like, do we want revolution? Are we ready for that chaos?
Revolution is terrible.
Yeah, revolution is terrible, and it's kind of nice that we can go to the grocery store without worrying that there's going to be food or not.
Well, the problem I think is that we get more and more comfortable with violence and oppression that you don't even know anymore. As long as the oppression is sold to you with the representative color. It's like, I don't want if you're a black woman, you don't want to have a white man hurting you. You want a black woman that is whipping you. You want to be represented and understood in your prison. I'm arguing that the prison is not what you want at all. I would prefer... I want freedom. I want emancipation. I don't want injustice. I don't want to be fucked. And I think this is the problem. And this is what I have the problem with corporate and for this corporate representation. Like, I don't want to walk down the street and have all these ads and all this propaganda just as long as they have the representation of me. It's like if you go to Guantanamo Bay today, and you know what they do in Guantanamo Bay is that they play like, you know, fucking Barney the Purple Dinosaur and Britney Spears. I don't want to go to Guantanamo Bay and have Asian music. That's not the point. I don't want to be in Guantanamo Bay. But so, everybody's like begging, let me have my representation in the prison.
Yeah. It's so funny that, and you know, I'm part of this too, but we are like, oh, because we have Shazam now, we can do this. Oh, how amazing. We have Spotify, we can do this. With Instagram, we can do this. Like, we believe that we are getting all these options. Yeah. But while thinking that we are getting many, many options and we can do so many things that we couldn't do before, we are actually getting our options limited because we wake up and we just go back and forth, Instagram, Spotify, this, that. When we could actually just, I don't know, take a walk, you know, maybe pee in the lake, or like talk to the bird, or like chase some squirrels.
Yeah, lie around, do nothing.
And think about all these random things, like, you know, why does wind smell like this? Why do lights reflect like this? And why did this shadow make me think about my dead father? And then go through all those lost memories and then lost conversations, and then have a conversation you never had with your dead grandpa. You know, like, I wish I said this to him, or like, what would he have said if I asked him this? But instead of doing that, we're like, wake up, email, Spotify, Shazam, Instagram, email, bank account, Amex account, because we have all these great options.
We're just kept in this slave mentality, and we just think that because we have options and it's customizable that you are a free person, but actually you're just completely enslaved. You're enslaved in your mind, and you don't even know the difference. And I think it's so important to be reminded by people. I think you can really see this when you interact and meet people outside of the mental prison that is not affected by this, and people are shocked, and then you look at them like, why are they so upset? And you have no idea because you don't know what's the difference.
I noticed something similar with the word diversity, because people now people say diversity, and what they do is they kind of like attack on things that has strong identity. And you have to be inclusive. So you kind of like tear down a strong identity and make it very like neutral and kind of like whatever. So everything starts to become the same. Yep. And then that's supposed to be diversity. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You see it in like store designs. You see it in like the fonts, you know. It's like the more diverse these brands or companies or places get, the same they become.
It's like, I mean, many other people teaches the same kind of thing and introduce it. It's like, you don't want the master who doesn't force you and then they make you feel guilty. Like, the diversity thing is like, well, I can't complain about Nike. They make it so diverse already. And, you know, they're doing what we can and we have to do step by step. And what the terrible shit is like, they make their responsibility and so suddenly they don't have to do anything. The actual problem is not the fucking diversity. Yeah. There's a million other problems.
Oh wow, we can go on and on about these like corporations.
Yeah,
Because we can talk about the environmental issues, you know, we can talk about how BMW's ads and, you know, stupid fucking like activists like doing BMW commercials and shit.
I also want to introduce and make sure people are aware of this one thing. The reason why corporates are doing environmental activism, social activism, it's not because they care. Trust me on this one.
Yeah.
What happened after I forget all the details. This makes it very official and correct. But there was one man. There was one. You can DM me and I can find out if you really care. There was one man that was put by the feds, okay, by the government, to fix a lot of issues, to make it right after the financial collapse of 2008. But even though he was the one that fucked it up in the first place, but it's just there to make people, to appease the population, meaning you. And then what happens is all of these corporates, and then there's other financial disasters and stuff, and they need bailouts. To get the bailout, the companies need points. It's like Social Security. What do you call it? Like, what do you call that shit? Credit scores. There are credit scores for companies. And now there are credit scores for environmental and social activism stuff. You have to have a certain amount of points so that you get money from the government, which is just printed like inflation shit. Yeah. And all of that they do so that the government they can now control and have their mafia of who they bail out and who they don't. So when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, it was because they decided that they will go bankrupt. It was because Goldman Sachs are in bed with the government, and the government is owned by by Goldman Sachs, and that they have the points, and Lehman Brothers ran out of points, and then they go, well, done with you. And that keeps everybody in line. If you don't do what we tell you to do, you're out. So it has nothing to do with the fucking environment. It has nothing to do with diversity and all that shit. And when all the people get all excited for corporates to be like, oh, we're doing inclusion. No, you're not. You have no fucking clue. You are just corporate pawns, and you're selling yourself very cheaply to these corporates. And now they just know what is the right amount for you to shut up and get back to work. It's like, there's now a multicolored kind of advertising. That's okay then. I got nothing to complain about.
They also want everybody to throw away what they already have and get a new version, like the less SDG version of. Get rid of your microwave and get an SDG microwave. Get rid of your car and get an electric car. Get rid of this, that, everything. Get rid of it and get a new one that is good for the environment. It's like, because everybody's already like kind of like stuck up. They have enough materials already, so they need a strategy to make people throw away what they have and renew everything, so
that's like, that was what happened with the
SDGs,
with the whole lockdown thing. And they say, people stopped spending, so they were really worried about inflation, they were worried about all these things. And now it's like, first the government was like, it'll be fine, we'll just print more money and then everything will bounce back after COVID, and people were gonna spend what they didn't spend. And then guess what? People didn't spend because they're like, I'm broke, I have no money. And then now they're like, well, fuck, here's some more money, go and buy stuff, and they're still not buying, and then there's all these supply chain issues, so let's see how the economy goes. Anyway, this is supposed to be about this one fucking movie, Junshin. You gave it 1.5 out of 5, I give it a 3 out of 7. Go watch the film, and we'll come up with another one next time.
Yeah, and if you watch the film, give us a comment on the YouTube page, and we will respond to it as much as we can.
And